At that moment, Li Wan was darting across the rooftops, thinking about what the old man had said. Had the Huang family been attacked yet? Intelligence was limited now, but seeking out the emperor and gathering information on the power dynamics of the new emperor and the noble families shouldn't be an issue. Another emperor had died during the disputes. What did that have to do with him? The important thing was not to disturb his life or involve his wife. He thought to himself, let me see what schemes you're up to. What can your little noble family possibly do to me? He flew swiftly like the wind, a clear sign that Li Wan truly loved his wife. He was always concerned about her safety, yet little did he know that his wife was actually the empress of the entire dynasty. On an early morning, as the large and small clouds raced across the sky, a vibrant blue sky with a bit of the sun peeking out, people, including officials, were at Dragon Mountain Temple, the most prosperous temple of Great Land. The abbot here was Grand Master Kongwen, a highly revered and respected figure. His long, flowing white beard made it clear that he was an elder monk. Every year, Grand Master Kongwen would help beggars, using them to build a vast intelligence network. Because of this, he had become the fastest source of news in the city. Last night, the heavenly prison was breached, likely by the mastermind of the rebel army. It was said that the guards were cursed at all night, and one even discovered he had been cuckolded when he got home. 2 beggars were reporting the latest dramas in the capital to him when suddenly, a girl's pleading voice filled with sincerity and earnestness interrupted them. Grand Master Kongwen, I've heard that your news updates are always quick. Please, I beg you, tell me where the leader of the rebel army is. The girl was Li Zuj, who still hadn't given up on finding that man. The old abbot responded in a calm and deliberate voice, Amitabha Buddha, you are not the first to ask this of me. However, then, clasping his hands together, he continued in a tone full of helplessness, I swear to the Buddha, I truly do not know where that person is. Before he could finish, a loud and friendly greeting startled him, Greetings, Grand Master. Li Wan's greeting made him break out in a cold sweat as he silently prayed for Buddha's mercy. Li Zuj immediately ran over to Li Wan and his wife with a question full of surprise and curiosity, Mister, why are you two here? Li Wan, holding his wife's hand, cheerfully replied, we heard that the wishing tree here is very effective. We came to hang a prayer plaque. Sister Cho, do you really believe in that? Li Zuj quickly turned to ask Ru Li, and this question caused the abbot to be shocked, as if he had just realized something shocking. Chu, the surname of the emperor? When Ru Li answered Li Zuj's innocent question with, just for peace of mind, her gaze turned towards the emperor as if they were both realizing something about each other. The abbot was even more startled, his eyes wide open, and sweat began to pour down his face. What is this situation with the emperor and this couple? When the new emperor is supposed to be staying in the palace performing Buddhist rites, it's definitely not a mistake, he thought. As he observed the sweet gestures of the young couple in love, he became even more astonished. Am I dreaming? The great rebel, feared by all, is married to the Empress of Great Land? Finally, Li Zuj bid her farewell and obediently left. I've finished my wish. I won't disturb you any longer. As soon as Li Zuj departed, the abbot clasped his hands together, tears streaming down his face, and said, You too, I'm not here to untangle karmic ties. The couple exchanged surprised glances, seemingly not understanding what the old man was talking about. The abbot assumed that they were aware of each other's identities, which is why he made such a statement. Little did he know, both of them were hiding their true identities. Realizing this, the abbot quickly added, it's nothing, when you get to my age, you tend to say foolish things. But inside, he was thinking, could it be that they really don't know? Seeing that both of them wanted to keep their secrets, the abbot naturally decided to keep their secret as well. He led the young couple to the temple's wishing tree. It was a magnificent tree, with a massive trunk that seemed to have lived for thousands of years, perhaps even longer than the combined ages of Li Wan and his wife. The branches had sprouted into many limbs, adorned with pale pink leaves gently falling to the ground. It created a breathtaking, romantic scene that anyone would dream of witnessing. Surrounding the tree were wish plaques that visitors had hung, hoping their wishes would come true. People said that the wishing tree of Dragon Mountain Temple was incredibly powerful, which drew many pilgrims to this place. And for that, they had to thank the intent of benefactor Li. Suddenly, Li Wan turned to look at the commotion nearby. It was 3 monks with shaved heads and saffron robes, alongside a farmer who was kneeling before them. The elderly monk said, My dear benefactor, I see a dark aura on your brow. In the coming days, you're certain to encounter misfortune, but praying here can help you avoid it. He continued, speaking louder as if seizing the opportunity, Right now, we have a special prayer service. For just 9.9 taels, your entire family, young and old, will be safe. For just 9.9 taels, no disasters, no deceit. What are you waiting for? They spoke so convincingly that the farmer was terrified and immediately handed over a pouch. I'll pray for 10 wishes. Here's 100 taels. Keep the change. At that moment, Li Wan felt helpless. He thought, when martial monks force prices on ordinary people, who dares to say no? A wooden plaque with a red string appeared in the hands of both Li Wan and Ru Li. The emperor said, write down your wishes and hang them on the tree. The young couple looked up at the wishing tree as if they were about to write their individual wishes. Then, Li Wan quickly leaned over and whispered into the abbot's ear, Monk, I actually have something I want to ask you. The abbot's face suddenly froze. Could it be that Li Wan knew something about him? The royal family is plotting something? I wouldn't know, the abbot replied. Why would the royal family have schemes? All I know is about the Dang Then grain store. If you really want to find out, you should go there and see for yourself. Before the abbot could catch his breath, Li Wan raised his hand and abruptly turned away, a satisfied look on his face. That's enough, thank you. Then, he walked over to his wife, holding up his wish plaque as if he were sharing something with her. The abbot, on the other hand, was deep in thought. What a peculiar fate. How did these two end up as husband and wife? If one day they discover each other's true identities, what will they choose? Will they face each other on the battlefield, swords drawn? As he imagined this scene, the abbot pictured the two, once lovingly gazing into each other's eyes, now locked in a fierce duel, their eyes blazing with intensity. It would be such a pity for this beautiful moment to be ruined. The abbot's face showed a sorrowful expression as if mourning the couple's fate. The tree, laden with so many wishes from countless lives, now held two plaques side by side, those of Li Wan and his wife, both hoping to remain together forever. One wished for eternal peace for her husband. These wishes were beautiful, but would their lives truly be as they had wished? The scene shifts to a different space, surrounded by walls and chains hanging from the ceiling, almost reaching the ground. A man in a powerful-looking cloak stood before an old physician, who was bound by chains. I'll ask you one more time, where is the leader of the rebel army? It turns out the man questioning him was an official of the court. Accompanying him was a young man who had captured the old physician. Despite their serious and intimidating demeanor, the old man showed no fear and calmly replied, who knows? Maybe he's hiding deep within 20,000 leagues under the sea. Haven't I already told you everything I know? The young man then held up a rolled-up piece of paper in his hand. Are you talking about this? As he unrolled the paper, it revealed drawings of superheroes, along with phrases like, in the most desperate times, he can transform into a 200-meter-tall mecha, proficient in all kinds of ninja arts. Nearly became a pirate, with various harems, enemy of the wicked, friend of the righteous, chosen by the heavens to gather all 7 Dragon Balls. Upon reading this, the young man was so enraged that he tore the ridiculous paper in half, shouting, what kind of nonsense is this? The old man responded with a smug look on his face, yeah, with your level of intelligence, you wouldn't understand the content. Though he appeared confident, inside he was sweating with anxiety. He didn't know what kind of nonsense that brat Li Wan was spewing, but it was enough to scare these people. The young man then firmly addressed the man in the cloak, Master Chen Hai, I think we should resort to torture. As he spoke, he raised his sword level with the old man's face. In response, the old man feigned amusement and taunted, yeah, go ahead and try. Do you think I'm scared? Without missing a beat, Chen Hai shot back with a fiery remark, I think we should throw you to a pack of wolves, with a little sedative added in. At those words, the old man's feigned confidence crumbled into sheer terror, sweat pouring from his forehead and cheeks. He fell silent, then suddenly screamed so loudly that both Chen Hai and the young man flinched, I'll confess everything. Chen Hai, now serious, crossed his arms and began his interrogation, then tell me, who brought you the steamed buns you ate? The barrage of questions from the old man left Chen Hai speechless, unable to respond. The next day, Chen Hai was in the imperial palace, reporting to His Majesty about the old man. The fact that he gave Mantu to the prisoner suggests that his financial resources are insufficient. Furthermore, his act of breaking into the prison indicates that he currently has no thoughts of rebellion but may be lying in ambush. I boldly speculate that he might have disbanded the rebel army to return to a normal life, perhaps because he got married and now has a wife and children, making it impossible for him to engage in dangerous activities. According to the intelligence revealed by the prisoner, most of the noble families are colluding with the remnants of the rebel army. But the leader is not that man. At this moment, Ru Li's face was completely different from when she was with her husband. She looked sharp, beautiful, and full of authority, wearing the emperor's crown. But after hearing Chen Hai's reasoning, she replied, you have done well, my dear official, you can match wits with him. Who is your majesty referring to? Chen Hai asked, feeling both helpless, curious, and utterly confused. Ru Li answered, while also thinking about her husband, "Oh, it's nothing, just an exceptionally talented young man who specializes in solving difficult cases. Li Wan talks to me every day about this young man. Does such a person truly exist in the world?" Chen Hai respectfully replied to Her Majesty, "Having received your Majesty's favor, I will surely devote myself to my duties to repay your kindness." Ru Li then said, "You may withdraw." With that, Chen Hai took his leave from the imperial palace. After he left, Ru Li pondered for a long time, a man with little money who wants to return to a normal life after getting married? That scope is too broad. For example, my own Li Wan is also like that. As she thought of her husband, an image of Li Wan standing on the rooftop, watching the people of the capital city below, came to her mind. He was staring intently at a certain spot, where the monk said it might not be possible to use brute force as before. He needed to think of a way to sneak in, making a big move would be impossible. Otherwise, his wife would worry about him. Li Wan was standing on the rooftop, contemplating a way to sneak into the place he wanted to enter when he noticed something. He stepped back slightly, not wanting to block the path of passers-by. It turned out that 2 patrolling palace guards were ordering a vegetable vendor to immediately tidy up his stall. Li Wan whispered to himself, with a smirk forming on one side of his lips. It seemed he had come up with a plan. Merchants fear city management. No matter where you are, it's always the same. A fiery gleam flashed in his eyes. What will Li Wan do in this operation, and will he succeed in sneaking into the place? At a small shop, the place where Li Wan had been racking his brain to find a way to infiltrate, he finally managed to enter as if he were an ordinary customer buying goods. He stood there, looking at the items as if debating whether to purchase something, but in reality, he was thinking that the time was almost near. Soon after, an employee hurriedly reported to his boss in a rushed, urgent tone, with a voice full of panic, "Manager, something big has happened." He moved closer to the boss and whispered the confidential news that the 6 Doors agency officers were heading towards this location. Upon hearing this, the old manager couldn't help but be stunned, shouting in shock, "What?" Immediately afterward, he handed a ledger to his subordinate and whispered, "Take this and go quickly, make sure you deliver it to the master." The man instantly dashed off at full speed to complete the task assigned by his boss. From a distance, Li Wan appeared, as if he were watching someone swiftly executing his plan. His gaze was sharp. He merely smirked lightly to one side, as if he already knew what would happen next. The sound of hurried footsteps from 3 people in cloaks echoed, with the leader wearing a pair of powerful-looking shoes. Suddenly, they stopped and shouted, as if issuing an order, "Surround this place. Don't let anyone leave." Sure enough, Chen Hai had led his men to this place. As he entered, he gave the order, "Search the area. Don't overlook any suspicious spots." The palace guards quickly took on their tasks, carrying out his orders. Some opened rice barrels, while others looked under cupboards and beds, only to find a tiny mouse staring back at them with a confused expression, as if to say, "Huh, what?" After a thorough search, it seemed they couldn't find any trace or clue. Reporting to the official, "We didn't find anything suspicious," one of the soldiers reported. Chen Hai's face was full of frustration as he muttered under his breath, "Just who provided this intelligence?" As soon as he asked, the soldier next to him replied, reporting, "He claims to be a spy deployed by His Majesty in the mortal realm, referring to himself as Imperial Secret Agent 007. A person of His Majesty, could this be an order from His Majesty? The thought was evident on Chen Hai's face as he pondered deeply. His sharp eyes were focused on one spot when suddenly a few glittering lumps, like gold, fell from somewhere, startling Chen Hai. "What is this?" Meanwhile, Li Wan was quite pleased with the ledger in his hand. So, the report was indeed completed. The 6 Doors agency was easily fooled. These tools of the state do serve a purpose. Some admiration for the emperor is due. Beneath his feet lay the old boss's henchman, unconscious after being taken down by Li Wan, who had seized the secret ledger. Raising the ledger, he said, "Let's see what schemes you're plotting." January 20th, the royal lady visited Mr. Tran's house and left 10 minutes later. January 21st, the royal lady visited Mr. Lu's house and left 20 minutes later. January 22nd, as he read further, Li Wan's face darkened with anger, not knowing what to make of it. What the hell is this? A diary of infidelity? Planning to use this for revenge one day? Are they using their own cuckoldry as a code? Though ruthless, it seemed he didn't believe the words written in this diary. No, something wasn't right. The ledger clearly concealed something. He used his internal energy to test it. Instantly, he extended his finger as if performing some sort of spell. A light appeared, along with other lines of text on the ledger. So that's it, they used mineral-infused energy to write the book. This way, even if someone stole the ledger, without the use of internal energy, the hidden content would remain invisible. As the hidden text was revealed, it became clear that the person in question was also in the capital. But no matter, this letter wouldn't have any impact once the emperor began his move. Upon reading this, Li Wan's eyes gleamed with understanding. Is this about me? Based on the content, he realized the plan was to assassinate the new emperor during her traditional post-coronation outing. Although this didn't directly involve him, if things escalated, it would become his problem. The emperor's outing is a customary event after ascending the throne. Who knows what methods these scoundrels would use to carry out their plot. Li Wan was worried that their actions might affect his wife. Therefore, he had only one option, to refuse participation in this event. His eyes gleamed ominously for a moment, but then he felt a sense of relief with his simple solution. Just refusing to participate would be enough. He turned away as if nothing had happened, looking innocent. He thought of his wife as the emperor. After all, he should stay far away. Troubles wouldn't find him. At the same time, his wife, Ru Li, was indeed acting as the emperor. She was holding a memorial and contemplating a tour around the capital. At that moment, a voice announced, "Your Majesty, Chen Hai seeks an audience." Ru Li responded in a regal tone, "Let him in." Chen Hai immediately entered and bowed, "I pay my respects to Your Majesty. Your Majesty, as expected, I have followed your instructions and investigated. The royal family is indeed plotting something." Ru Li, curious about the emperor's directive, thought, "This fellow is getting more articulate by the day." Chen Hai continued his report, "This yellow mineral energy is called Buvim stone. I discovered it in the royal food shop." He held up a piece of mineral that looked like gold. "This is Buvim stone. Its power is not great, but if a large amount of this mineral is gathered, it can cause a big explosion. I recommend canceling this outing." Ru Li looked at her throne, clasped her hands behind her, and said, "Every dynasty's emperor has never skipped this tradition. If we cancel now, won't that just help the arrogant noble families? It's time for them to know who truly rules the great land." She spoke as if she had a plan ready. "Moreover, if the noble families can't deal with these things, how can I ensure he has a peaceful life in the capital? Meeting him during this outing is something I'm very curious about." As she spoke, Ru Li covered her mouth with her hand, her cheeks flushed as if she was embarrassed at the thought of meeting her husband. Indeed, what a newlywed couple. Will they meet as Ru Li hopes? At that moment, a voice rang out in the palace, "Your Majesty, the breakfast from the imperial kitchen has arrived." A maid announced to Ru Li, who was seated on her throne, focused on the memorial on her desk. "Your Majesty, what would you like for breakfast?" The maid repeatedly asked, and Ru Li's cold response made the maid ponder. Clearly, the emperor had a preference for sour dishes, but why did she always choose sweet ones? After a while, a variety of beautifully presented and appetizing dishes were laid out on the table. Li Wan, Ru Li's husband, couldn't help but be impressed by his wife's cooking skills. "Your skills are improving more and more. But aren't you tired from cooking so much?" Ru Li, blushing and shy, replied, "It's not too tiring. While in the palace, I had the kitchen staff prepare these dishes, which made the cook quite exhausted." She continued in a timid tone, as if she wanted to ask her husband for something. "By the way, tomorrow I have arranged to go out with some friends to see the new emperor's outing." Li Wan was so surprised that he stopped reaching for the pastry he was about to eat. His eyes widened, and his mouth fell open in shock. "Arranged to see the new emperor? You have friends?" Ru Li, with an annoyed expression, frowned at her husband. "What, can't I have friends?" Li Wan quickly explained, "Oh, no, I didn't mean that. I just haven't met any of your friends before." He was thinking about how to handle the situation. Normally, Ru Li did not interact much with others and rarely made friends. He didn't want to stop her from going out. Immediately, Li Wan cheerfully suggested, "In that case, I'll come with you tomorrow." However, Ru Li turned her face away with a pout and then turned abruptly to the side. Humph, Li Wan knew immediately that his wife was not pleased with that idea. That night, in bed, Ru Li lay facing the wall and fell asleep, while Li Wan, with his head resting on his hand and eyes wide open, seemed deep in thought about going out with friends. Why couldn't he prevent this? Then he would follow along to protect her. So who could be friends with his wife? But making friends was good too, safety was his responsibility. As he thought, he looked at his wife's back and smiled gently. Li Wan's love for his wife was truly unmatched. The next morning, the sun was already high in the sky. A question rang out from Li Wan, "Is my wife up yet?" He asked while yawning repeatedly, his hair a disheveled mess. Glancing over to where his wife usually slept, he was suddenly startled wide awake. Then, he shouted, "Oh no! I overslept, this is bad." Last night, he had been thinking too much and ended up going to bed late. A little while later, he was out on the streets, jostling with the villagers. "She didn't wake me up again," he muttered. "She was definitely mad last night. I need to find her quickly. She's probably on the road somewhere." Not far from Li Wan, a large crowd had gathered. He approached to take a look and saw many soldiers along with an ornate palanquin. Perfect timing, their target was the new emperor. "I just need to make sure my wife isn't nearby," he thought. But then, where on earth did she go? He glanced around, feeling helpless with his hands on his hips. Suddenly, he overheard a rumor from the crowd. "They say the new emperor is the most beautiful woman in the world. Is it true? It's already rare for great land to have a female emperor, but to have a beauty too. They say the concubines in the harem all feel very ashamed." At this, Li Wan simply thought, "Isn't she just like Wu Zetian from another world, just another ruthless woman?" But at that moment, as he walked past the emperor's palanquin, he still hadn't spotted any sign of Ru Li. Where on earth did she go, he wondered. At this moment, inside the palanquin, an emperor wearing a crown raised the curtain slightly, allowing only one eye to peek out and observe. As she gazed in the direction of Li Wan, he too turned towards the palanquin, but could only see a vague silhouette inside. Yet, Li Wan still wondered, could she be looking at me, with a doubtful question in his mind. Inside the palanquin, the emperor thought, "You fool, who told you to wake up late?" But right after that, Li Wan turned away, feeling cheerful. The journey is almost over. Maybe there's no danger after all. She might have already gone home. However, out of nowhere, a hand seemed to grab him from behind, causing him to turn around with sharp eyes. Meanwhile, in a nearby room, a soldier of the imperial court, covered in blood, looked shocked as if he had just realized something. How did this end up here? I must report this to Lord Chenhai, he thought. Around him lay other soldiers who had been slain, but he was still trying to crawl away, unable to move far. A blood-soaked sword suddenly pierced through his back, ending his life before he could report his findings to Chenhai. Is the skill level of the Six Doors Agency really this low? A sinister voice echoed as a red-eyed figure wearing a terrifying mask appeared. Only that little brat Chenhai has some skill. A voice called out from behind, "Let's go, don't forget to bring that pouch of energy stones." They all wore masks, making it hard to identify them. Finally, the last masked figure removed his mask, revealing a wicked smile. "We must make sure that Dog Emperor dies without leaving a trace." He looked truly menacing. Who could he be to act alone like this? Before Chenhai were the bloodied corpses of soldiers, some with swords driven through their chests, and even blood splattered on the surrounding walls. Did we arrive too late? Chenhai stood frozen, while one of his men knelt down to examine the slain soldiers, making his own deductions. The method is ruthless. The killer clearly could have ended them quickly but deliberately chose to let them die in agony. As soon as the man finished speaking, Chenhai suddenly shouted, as if realizing something was terribly wrong. Could it be that guy? He then commanded his soldiers, "Everyone, split up and investigate. If you find any suspicious characters, do not engage, send up a signal to contact me." The young man accompanying him asked with concern, "Sir Chenhai, who could have done this? Why are you so tense? Could it be the rebels?" Chenhai's face grew even more serious as he responded, "It's not him, but someone even more vicious. He knows our Six Doors Agency's investigative techniques and system all too well. If it's him, there's a high chance he's trying to lure us here to ambush the Emperor. But how could that be? Our Six Doors Agency has never had any loopholes." The young man shouted in alarm. Chenhai then asked, "But what if it's the person who built the system? Could it be that guy?" The young man was horrified by this possibility. Chenhai's sharp eyes and furrowed brows made it clear that he had identified the person as Luo Shangzuj. The young man then asked Chenhai, "Sir, I joined the Six Doors Agency late, and I've only heard stories about that man's brutality. How powerful is he?" Chenhai responded with a grave expression, "If I relied solely on my own strength, I wouldn't be able to serve as the head of the Six Doors Agency. When that incident occurred, the influence of the rebels was immense. The late emperor was terrified of the turmoil spreading and dragging the citizens of the capital into it, so he cracked down hard on the rebellion. Luo Shangzuj was the new head of the Six Doors Agency at the time and intensified control over the capital." As Chenhai spoke, an image of that man appeared in his mind. Luo Shangzuj sat on a throne, surrounded by his disciples, his red eyes glowing with a terrifying aura. Luo Shangzuj was utterly ruthless. He established a strict set of rules. Every time he enforced the law, it resulted in massive destruction, injuring innocent people. Under his control, the capital became a living hell. He was like a demon, with the bodies of citizens lying beneath his feet amidst flames of various sizes. It was truly savage. At first, his oppressive methods did manage to suppress rebellion and dissent, but eventually, it led to an explosive backlash. The people of the capital could no longer endure it, and a large-scale uprising broke out. The late emperor, in an effort to appease the anger of the populace, ordered Luo Shangzuj's removal and dispatched the 4 great masters Dou Zhang, Kang Shou, Tru Treng, and Nian Zuot of the Six Doors Agency to take him down. Chen Hai continued recounting Luo Shangzuj's overwhelming power, far beyond anyone's imagination. The most elite troops were utterly annihilated by him. A terrifying image emerged, Luo Shangzuj standing over countless slain bodies, with his hand piercing through a soldier. After that, he vanished without a trace, disappearing completely. Because of these deeds, he became known as the Hell Reaper in the eyes of everyone and earned the title of the Jade-Faced Azura. While Chen Hai and his troops were lost in thought, Li Wan was frantically searching for his wife. Suddenly, a familiar, cheerful voice called out, "Hello, landlord." It was none other than Li Zuj. "Oh, it's you," he exclaimed. Li Zuj was carrying a large bundle on her back, as if she had run away from home to some far-off place. In her hands was a small bag filled with steaming, delicious buns. "Are you here looking for food too, landlord?" She took a big bite of a bun and spoke with her mouth full. "The emperor is out for a walk today, so many shops are giving away free food. Lots of tasty treats." Li Wan, bewildered and helpless, asked, "Don't tell me that giant bundle on your back is all food?" Li Zuj's eyes widened, crumbs clinging to her mouth. "Yep, it's all my New Year's supplies." "My goodness, so it was food, not clothes. Running away from home with nothing but food, how shameless." Li Wan could only laugh. Beyond her thick skin, this showed how much Li Zuj loved food. Suddenly, Li Zuj leaned in close, pointing a finger at Li Wan, and said, "Landlord, you don't fully get it. I'm nothing. Some people are even crazier than me. They had a bag this big, filled with yellow qi-infused stones, which must be worth a fortune." As she spoke, the innocent girl gestured wildly with her hands. At this, Li Wan was startled. Yellow qi-infused stones? Could they be Baoyan stones? He immediately questioned Li Zuj urgently, "Which direction did those people go?" Li Zuj pointed toward a distant wall and said, "They were just in that alley, looked like they headed east." Upon hearing this, Li Wan bolted toward the direction she indicated. Are these fools insane? With that many Baoyan stones, are they trying to blow this whole street to bits? He quickly reached the wall and cursed under his breath, "Damn, they've already left? This is getting inefficient." In a flash, Li Wan used his strength to leap onto the roof of the capital. From there, he surveyed the surroundings. He saw the emperor's palanquin being carried, the townsfolk strolling about, and in another direction, soldiers with their leader. Li Wan spotted Luo Shangzuj, carrying his large, dark red sword, with soldiers following behind him. Li Wan jumped down and shouted, "Stop." He dashed towards Luo Shangzuj like a lightning bolt. Just then, Luo Shangzuj turned and swung his sword in a powerful arc aimed at Li Wan. But fortunately, Li Wan dodged it. With a playful tone, he remarked, "You can assassinate the emperor all you want, but using large-scale destructive weapons is a no-go." As soon as he finished speaking, Luo Shangzuj made a decisive move. He swung his sword over his head as if to gather momentum for a massive strike at Li Wan. But once again, Li Wan dodged gracefully, causing the sword to slam into the ground with tremendous force, shattering it into large and small stones that formed 3 terrifying red whirlpools. These stones flew out and crashed into nearby houses, even frightening the soldiers following him. Luo Shangzuj, still wearing a smug expression, said, "You've got some skills." He bared his sharp teeth, and his eyes blazed with fury. Li Wan shouted and pointed directly at him, "Hey, can't you take a little advice? I have no intention of stopping you from assassinating the new emperor." Luo Shangzuj seemed to ignore Li Wan's words and instead raised his sword, preparing to strike again. Reflexively, Li Wan could only raise his small hand to block. The giant sword was 3 times the size of Li Wan's hand, but at that moment, Luo Shangzuj began to feel fear. What? The question flashed in his mind, showing his growing confusion. He pushed with all his might, trying to overpower Li Wan, but it was futile. "I've tried talking to you nicely, so why won't you listen? Don't use weapons that affect others, especially my beloved wife." Li Wan's face now looked cool and fierce. "If talking won't work, it seems I'll have to teach you a lesson." Li Wan's fiery gaze became truly terrifying. What would Li Wan do? Could Luo Shangzuj defeat him? Luo Shangzuj bared his sharp teeth, his eyes blood-red, and roared, "What did you say? Teach me? I am the Jade-Faced Demon." But just as he was reveling in his own pride, a knee suddenly struck Luo Shangzuj in a vulnerable spot, causing him so much pain that he couldn't utter a word. He collapsed, clutching himself, trembling from the agony. That bastard dared to hit me there? And he even targeted below the belt. Doesn't he know the martial code? Luo Shangzuj screamed at Li Wan through the pain. How dare you? Li Wan calmly responded with a lecturing tone. Come on, man, it's not my fault you left yourself wide open. This move is called no holds barred, take notes. Oh no, Luo Shangzuj had overcome the pain and refocused on the fight. He gripped the hilt of his sword tightly, with a face full of satisfaction and glee, and shouted, You little brat, I'll castrate you. He delivered a lethal strike with his sword, splitting a massive boulder in two. Li Wan, though small in stature, showed no signs of fear. Luo Shangzuj's slashes were all skillfully dodged by Li Wan, who remained untouched. Li Wan's eyes never left those deadly sword strikes. Suddenly, his hand clenched tightly, and a green flame-like aura appeared, forming a protective barrier against the massive sword blows. The green clashed with Luo Shangzuj's red, creating a sharp divide between the two energies that could not be reconciled. As one of Li Wan's feet was forced to step back, he appeared to be struggling more. Luo Shangzuj, feeling triumphant, assumed that Li Wan was losing his footing. Is that all you've got? I was just warming up. Now I suppose I'll have to use half of my strength. Li Wan shouted angrily, Don't you dare ruin my clothes. My wife bought this outfit for me. This remark left Luo Shangzuj momentarily dumbfounded. He couldn't believe that Li Wan was concerned about his clothes in such a situation. Luo Shangzuj's smugness only grew as he vowed to show Li Wan his true power. But suddenly, the smug smile on Luo Shangzuj's face vanished, replaced by a cry of pain as Li Wan's fist connected with his cheek. Luo Shangzuj was sent flying nearly 200 meters, and his sword slipped from his grasp. Li Wan's hand remained clenched, still smeared with Luo Shangzuj's blood. In front of me, what are you pretending for? Do you think I won't go all out? How could I not? The thought, combined with the terror Li Wan instilled in him, left Luo Shangzuj with blood smeared all over his nose and mouth. Li Wan continued, You think you're invincible, huh? That's a mental illness, a delusion. Let me cure you. A serious and terrifying look flashed in Li Wan's eyes, followed by a series of cries from Luo Shangzuj, Mom, save me. Oh my god, help. What did Luo Shangzuj's face look like now? His forehead, eyes, nose, and mouth were swollen like figs, tomatoes, even potatoes. His front teeth were broken, with blood smeared all over his mouth, nose, and cheeks. With a final, devastating blow, Li Wan punched him again, sending him flying into the air, only to crash down headfirst into the ground, shattering the bricks beneath him. Luo Shangzuj had been swiftly and thoroughly defeated by Li Wan in front of his own men, leaving them terrified, pale, and drenched in sweat. They dared not utter a word, only thinking to themselves, Our boss is supposed to be a legendary figure, yet he couldn't even put up a fight against this guy. Just who is this man? This is bad, we need to get out of here. As they were packing up to flee, Li Wan called out, Hey, where do you think you're going? A smile spread across his face. The sky was gradually darkening, and the sun was setting. Only the echoes of their cries remained, along with a man standing with his arms crossed, looking pleased. Without any ropes to bind them, they were left in that state. Oh dear. Li Wan had laid all of them out on the ground, with only their bruised faces sticking up. A bunch of idiots who don't understand human language. Stay there and reflect on your actions. Li Wan noticed something that caught his attention, a bag containing gold bars. Is this really that dangerous? I wouldn't even trust it with those lackeys from Six Doors Agency, he thought. Li Wan stared at the bag for a while and suddenly had an idea. He tossed the bag high into the air and said, Time for fireworks. Indeed, it was fireworks. Bright bursts of fireworks began to bloom in the sky, capturing everyone's attention. The townspeople looked up in wonder, admiring the spectacle. So beautiful. What holiday is it today? I don't know, but the fireworks are stunning. Of course, the fireworks also caught Ru Li's attention. She gazed at them and wondered, who's setting off these fireworks? I still don't know where that idiot has gone. As she thought about it, she recalled her husband. At the same time, Li Wan was wondering if Ru Li had seen them. They were indeed a newlywed couple, always thinking of each other no matter where they were. The sound of heavy footsteps approached, accompanied by a loud command from the Imperial troops, Everyone pay attention, don't let the commoner escape. Li Wan seemed to hear the commotion. Had the Six Doors Agency finally arrived? It was always like this, showing up only after everything was over. He gave a slight push with his feet, gaining momentum, and took off into the sky. Left on the battlefield, the members of the Six Doors Agency were filled with curiosity and confusion. What exactly happened here? Is this guy Luo Shangzuj? Look at Cheng Shui's face, he looks terrified. Who could have buried him alive like this? Only one person could go to such lengths, but he doesn't have the ability to assist our people. What on earth happened? Behind them, soldiers were carrying out their orders to secure the scene. Some were silently observing, including a girl with a penchant for eating. It turned out she had been there for a long time and had witnessed the entire scene where Li Wan dealt with each person one by one. Such terrifying strength surely couldn't belong to a normal person like their host seemed to be. Why is the master of the house hiding his true strength? Could he be the one I've been searching for all along? These unanswered questions left the girl feeling bewildered. On a bustling street, filled with young men and women dressed in vibrant clothes, rows of lanterns were hanging brightly. The atmosphere was lively and bustling, and of course, there were stalls selling all sorts of new things to satisfy the crowd. At one stall selling candied hawthorns, a young couple was drawn in, while another stall with toys featuring characters like Doraemon caught the twinkling eyes of the children. At this moment, Li Wan showed signs of exhaustion. In fact, the stroll had ended, and he still hadn't found Ru Li. Where could she have gone, he said, letting out a sigh. Suddenly, a voice came from behind him. Why do you look so down? Why didn't you greet me when we crossed paths today? Li Wan scratched his head, turned around, and walked towards his wife, saying, Oh, was that really you? Did we pass by each other? I turned the entire capital upside down and still couldn't find you. Ru Li responded with her eyes half closed, Yeah, I figured you must have been enticed by some girl, like the Empress today. Isn't she rumored to be the most beautiful goddess in the world? Li Wan immediately reassured his wife to avoid her anger. Not at all, how could the Empress compare to you? My dear wife is the most beautiful woman in the world. Besides, during the stroll, she was covered by a curtain. Who knows what she actually looks like? I knew it, came a loud voice with a hand raised to get the attention of the couple. Despite having a full stomach, she still wasn't satisfied. The famous detective, known for her hearty appetite, moved closer to them. Li Zuj spoke, adjusting her glasses with a gesture that suggested her status as a renowned detective. At this point, the couple could only feel helpless and exasperated, but this dialogue is supposed to be part of the story I'm telling my wife. Did you overhear us? Suddenly, the girl shouted at the host, Sir, you're really clueless. Haven't you figured out the true appearance of the new Empress yet? The truth is this. She lifted her glasses and continued, The new Empress is not the most beautiful woman in the world. Instead, she has a fearsome, terrifying face that would make anyone shudder. That's why she hides behind a curtain. As she spoke, she pointed in a direction, causing Ru Li's face to darken with anger. Her face was burning with fury, and her eyes were glowing red, directed at Li Zuj's back, which made Li Zuj feel uneasy. Where is this sudden killing intent coming from? I have a bad feeling about this. And after that day, the food reserves Li Zuj had saved for the new year were seized by Six Doors Agency and added to the public treasury. Ru Li, looking flustered, explained, I met the new Empress today. She doesn't have a fearsome, terrifying face at all. As she spoke, she puffed out her cheeks in mock anger. Li Wan, reflecting on this, wondered if he had actually seen the new Empress. Come to think of it, she was out with friends today. Wait, could it be that they were at the candy hawthorn stand? Suddenly, Ru Li was startled by the sight of the hawthorn candies and the call, Ru Li, have a hawthorn candy to calm down. Li Wan said with a smile, but his wife refused to eat and continued to puff out her cheeks. Have it yourself, I don't want any, she replied. Li Wan chuckled, don't like the sugar coating, huh? He then popped the candies into his mouth, eating them one after another, and said, Is this better? The sour taste of the hawthorn seemed to lift his wife's mood. She blushed and bit into a candy, showing her enjoyment and satisfaction. The flavor wasn't bad at all. After they finished, they turned to Li Zuj. Li Wan asked, By the way, Li Zuj, where did you get those glasses? Li Zuj replied honestly, A little friend from the sky bumped into me earlier and spoke in a way I couldn't understand. Then, they hurried off, leaving the glasses behind. Suddenly, a loud shout from a royal official echoed, Clear the way. A murder has occurred. Do not obstruct the investigation. At that moment, Li Wan thought to himself, Not again, if that's the case, Six Doors Agency will be busy once more. A small fish pond with little boys and girls, some feeding the fish, others trying to catch them, caught Ru Li's attention. Before she could even ask, Li Wan noticed his wife's interest. Well, do you want to play? That made Ru Li a bit shy. She blushed, turned away, and said to her husband, This is something for kids to play with. I'm not interested. Suddenly, he took her hand and led her over to the pond. Oh, how sweet. The early days of love are the most magical. I want to play, join me. At this point, her face turned rosy red, and her bright eyes looked up at her husband with full of confusion. She gazed at the fish with determination as she held the net to catch them, clearly intending to catch the one she wanted. Li Wan then sat beside her and said, "Aim carefully before you make your move." The net caught a fish, but there was no joy on the couple's faces. It turned out the net had torn, and the fish slipped back into the water, splashing water onto Ru Li's face. She frowned in frustration and turned to Li Wan. He could only explain nervously. "You were too hasty. Don't be so impatient." Then he went over and took his wife's hand. "This time, I'll help you. We'll definitely catch it." The couple worked together, their hands moving in sync to catch a fish. As one fish was finally drawn into the net, he whispered in his wife's ear, "Now!" With Ru Li's shout. "Ah! Got it." A small fish was placed into a small bowl by the couple. It's true what they say, when a husband and wife work together, they can move mountains. Seeing his wife's joyful face with the small fish in the bowl, Li Wan thought, "I always thought she was only interested in money, but it turns out she has a childish side too." She immediately turned to refute. "I've just never done this before, so I was curious." Suddenly, a handkerchief was gently wiping her hair, startling her. Their clothes were all wet. "Let's go home." She simply replied, with a harmonious smile, clearly enjoying herself today. The couple walked home hand in hand, but Li Wan still had many questions. It seemed he still hadn't met Ru Li's friend. Moreover, Ru Li said she had seen him, which meant it wasn't convenient for him to see her. Meanwhile, Ru Li was thinking and suddenly spoke to Li Wan with an innocent face. "Honey, my friend isn't simple at all." At the same time, in a certain place in the capital, an old man was sitting at a desk with a government official bowing his head in fear. The man was trembling as the old man said, "Do you know how important that ledger is to us? If it falls into the emperor's hands, we're all as good as dead." So, the old man was none other than the head of the royal family, Huang Luo, and the person standing before him was his son, the eldest son of the royal family, Huang Duanjia. "Father, I understand. I've already arranged for the most professional people to investigate." At that moment, on the roof of the imperial court, there was a girl dressed in a fiery red outfit, looking incredibly alluring. She was none other than Blood Cinnamon, La Fei Yen, ranked 9th on the Great Land Assassin leaderboard. What could she be planning? On a cool, starry night, in a house nestled in the heart of the capital, two pairs of eyes met, filled with the shyness and bashfulness of a young couple. Ru Li was sitting on her husband's lap, as if the two were about to have a sweet and romantic evening. When her husband called her, she only responded with a single word. With eyes full of shyness and cheeks blushing red, her husband wondered nervously, why is Ru Li being so forward tonight? Suddenly, Ru Li asked her husband, "How did your clothes get torn? I clearly remember this outfit being the first gift I gave you." Li Wan quickly replied with an excuse. This happened when the new emperor was on tour, and it accidentally got ripped. Ru Li gazed deeply into her husband's eyes. At that moment, Li Wan could only smile awkwardly, not knowing what else to say. Ru Li decided to drop the matter, seemingly trusting her husband this time. But she warned, "Make sure you're more careful next time." Li Wan suddenly felt relieved and smiled brightly, thinking, "Thank goodness. It must be because I took her out to the night market earlier that her mood is so good." But it wasn't over yet. Ru Li, in a firm voice, declared, "But still, you must be punished. Your allowance will be docked for 2 months." Hearing this, Li Wan froze in shock, feeling like his entire body had turned to stone. The next morning, after a yawn and a stretch, Li Wan woke up earlier than his wife. Turning to look at her still asleep, he gazed at her with the affection of a man deeply in love, thinking, "Still in bed? Looks like she was really tired from yesterday. She looks so cute when she's sleeping." He couldn't stop himself from admiring her longer, focusing on her small lips and that rosy heart-shaped mouth. An idea popped into his mind, making his own cheeks blush. A sneaky kiss wouldn't hurt. Who could resist when my wife is so adorable? He slowly leaned in closer to her face, but just as he was about to steal a kiss, his lovely wife suddenly opened her eyes. Startled, he whispered, "Oops, you're awake." She looked at him and her face turned a deep shade of red. Then, there was probably a loud exclamation at a nearby breakfast table. The two of them sat together, sharing breakfast and chatting. His wife said, "That was quite effective. Your little slap really woke me up." On Li Wan's face, a small, red handprint was clearly visible. Ru Li huffed, crossing her arms and turning her head to the side. Li Wan continued, "Do you really have to be so sensitive?" Ru Li replied, her face still flushed with embarrassment. "It's not about that. I just don't like it when you do such things secretly." "I get it now," Li Wan said loudly, slamming his hand on the table. He continued, "If I can't kiss you in secret, then I'll do it openly and proudly." He moved closer to her, making her face grow even redder. Finally, they had the chance to share a kiss as they drew nearer, their noses almost touching, and they began to close their eyes to savor the moment. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a person stood there, mouth agape, blushing as well. "Good morning, Mr. and Ru Li, what are you two doing? Could this be an intruder?" The two of them grew even more embarrassed. "Nothing at all." Ru Li got some sand in her eye. "I was just blowing it out for her." They both turned away from each other, blushing with embarrassment. But deep inside, Li Wan's face was filled with fear as he realized his wife was angry. Desperately, he could only mutter, "Dear wife, can we negotiate? Maybe not hit my face?" Meanwhile, as they were out for a walk, a young woman with a frightened and puzzled expression sensed a murderous aura. She thought, "Whose killing intent was that? It feels like they could crush me as easily as squashing an ant." In her mind, an image of Li Wan appeared, towering over her with a massive hand, crushing a tiny girl in his grasp. Paralyzed with fear, she could only tremble, realizing, "This is a warning." The girl hesitated, then reached down between her full breasts to retrieve a small piece of paper hidden there. She thought to herself, "If it weren't for the high price the royal family offered and the relative simplicity of the task, I would have left this cursed place long ago." She unfolded the paper, which detailed her mission to find some missing confidential documents. The last person who had appeared was a young man, finding him should be much easier. Besides, she already knew his location, but a cold sweat still broke out on her face. "As long as I don't encounter another monster like that, I should be able to handle this." She clenched the mission paper tightly in her hands, steeling herself for the task ahead. But who exactly was she supposed to find? A girl stood in the night, introducing herself. "My name is Fei Yan, and I'm an assassin. As long as the price is right, there's nothing I can't do. From assassination to cleaning latrines, you name it, I do it. Today, I received a new assignment." Standing on the rooftop, she gazed into the distance where Li Wan and his wife were enjoying dinner together. All she had to do was find the ledger that the royal family had lost from this ordinary couple, and she could earn a hefty sum of money. As she watched Li Wan and his wife happily eating, she thought that they probably had no martial arts skills, as they hadn't noticed her presence at all. While she was thinking this, Li Wan, from inside, was already wondering, "What's that idiot doing on the roof?" Back to Fei Yan, she continued to observe the couple with a contemplative expression. She had already investigated their backgrounds and found some suspicious details. Looking at Li Wan, who was smiling, she thought that he seemed to be her first target. The man named Li Wan had only recently come to the capital, and there was almost no information about him before that. She then glanced at her second target, Ru Li. There was absolutely no information about her past either. It was as if they were both blank slates. Could it be? A delighted and confident expression appeared on her face as she thought, "These people might be easy pickings. Their status is so insignificant that no one even bothers to collect information on them." As she continued to ponder over her plan while watching them, a young boy's voice suddenly called out, "Mom, what's that lady doing up there?" The child's call startled Fei Yan. She turned to see the boy's mother approaching, taking her child's hand, and saying, "Don't look. Climbing on other people's roofs, she must be some mistress who's been kicked out." Hearing this, Fei Yan angrily shouted, "Who are you calling a mistress? And that brat? What do you mean, that lady? Call me a beautiful big sister, got it?" The commotion caught Ru Li's attention. She mentioned to her husband that there seemed to be some noise on the roof and wondered if there was something up there. But when she looked up, she saw nothing, as Fei Yan had quickly ducked down, covering her mouth. "This isn't good. I shouldn't lose my cool on the job. Stay calm, I'm a professional." She cleared her throat, trying to regain her composure, and then made a sound. Meow, 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 moo. It turned out she was imitating a cat to divert the young couple's attention. Ru Li and her husband both looked up at the sound. She commented, "The cat's cries sound so sorrowful." Li Wan cheerfully replied, "Ha ha, maybe it's a female cat in heat." Hearing this, Fei Yan, still behind the roof, fumed at Li Wan's comment about a female cat in heat. She yelled, "You're the one in heat. I'm a cute kitty, got it?" Suddenly, a swarm of cats appeared, black ones, white ones, some with fierce expressions, and others with sweet, gentle faces. They all started approaching Fei Yan. It seemed her earlier meowing had attracted the cats. Oh no! The cats leaped up with their mouths wide open. Fei Yan's fist sent them scattering in fear as she shouted, "Get lost, all of you! I wasn't calling you, you smelly cats!" But as soon as she finished, her face turned pale. Sweat dripped down her face as she realized the cats were now behind her. But this time, they all shared an expression of anger, ready to take revenge on the person who had punched them. She could sense their hostility. Turning around, she nervously smiled and started making cat noises and gestures, trying to appear as a cute kitty herself. But what had to happen, happened. The cats surrounded her and pounced, their meows echoing as they seemed to play with one of their own. Meow, 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 meow. This only piqued Ru Li's interest even more. She looked up and remarked how lively the stray cats were today. Li Wan, however, recognized the situation. He smiled weakly and gently suggested to his wife. This doesn't look too lucky. I think we should go to bed early tonight. Before going to bed, he looked up at that spot on the roof with suspicious eyes, waiting until the young couple's house had turned off the lights. Only then did a trembling hand crawl up. Great, they've finally gone to bed. This time, the difficulty has been lowered. She climbed up with excitement, but her face was no longer as perfect as it was at the beginning. Of course, after a fight with some cats, her face was marked by their sharp claws. Fei Yan flew down from the roof to the yard as swiftly as the wind. Next, she just needed to find the notebook. As soon as she sat down in the yard, a blue-covered notebook appeared right in front of her, as if on cue. Huh? This notebook? She was startled but couldn't hide her joy. She laughed triumphantly. Who would have thought she'd find it so quickly? I'm really lucky today. So engrossed in her happiness, she didn't notice the homeowner, Li Wan, sitting beside her and whispering in her ear. Congratulations, you completed the task so easily. Of course, she didn't realize it at first and instead responded naturally to Li Wan, even standing up to high-five him and saying, "That's right, it was too easy, wasn't it?" After the high-five, her smile suddenly vanished, replaced by beads of sweat that began to pour down her face. She had realized something. Meanwhile, Li Wan was smiling cheerfully at her, as if nothing had happened. Swoosh! Fei Yan's feet suddenly moved. She retreated about 10 meters away from Li Wan and shouted in a loud voice. You knew I was here all along? Li Wan maintained a bright smile and responded calmly. It would be strange if I didn't. You're here for the notebook, sent by the royal family, correct? Realizing that she had been caught, she immediately grew angrier. Her eyes blazed with an intent to kill Li Wan. Damn it! So your information has already been leaked? Now that it's come to this, I have no choice but to kill you. Li Wan remained unshaken, exuding confidence. He shouted. I advise you to stop now. I've warned you before. Li Wan's warning only made Fei Yan more uneasy. She thought to herself, warned me? Have I met this person before? At this moment, a sinister smile appeared on Li Wan's lips. He continued. Well then, let me refresh your memory. Feel it with your heart. Behind Li Wan, a vibrant image emerged, black, red, and purple hues forming a head twice his size. Fei Yan now realized who Li Wan was. She screamed. You're that monster from before. You're a peerless master. Li Wan grew stronger by the moment. Out of respect for Fei Yan not making a move in front of his wife, he decided to give her one last chance. I'll give you one opportunity. Make your choice. As soon as he finished speaking, Fei Yan drew a sword from behind her back. She said, as a professional assassin, I have my own code of honor. With the sword drawn, Fei Yan swiftly charged forward. Li Wan also gathered his strength, but facing an opponent she knew she couldn't defeat, Fei Yan fell to her knees in the yard, holding the sword horizontally with both hands, and offered it up to Li Wan. Please, spare me. He smiled kindly and said, a wise choice. Fei Yan put on an innocent look, squinting her eyes in an attempt to appear endearing. If you let me go, I could be your servant for a month. But Li Wan wasn't so easily swayed. You're overthinking it. My heart belongs only to my wife. He crossed his arms and lifted one foot, placing it in front of her. Sensing an opportunity, she quickly asked, Sir, who exactly are you? What do you want me to do? Li Wan sat down to face her at eye level. If you don't know who I am, that makes things easier. We'll make a deal under this starry night. His eyes gleamed with mystery, hinting at something yet to come. That night, in a small courtyard within the capital, Fei Yan and Li Wan were engaged in a secret conversation. Li Wan spoke, but before we discuss the deal, I'll have to impose a few restrictions on you. Hearing this, she visibly panicked. Her body trembled with fear, and before she could react, Li Wan pointed his finger at her forehead. A blue light appeared as if he was casting a spell on her. The sensation caused her intense pain, sweat dripping from her as she collapsed to the ground. What did you do to me? She cried. Li Wan leaned in close, speaking softly, your body is now filled with my energy. With just a command, I can make your body explode and kill you. So, have you thought carefully about how you'll report back once you return? Fei Yan, terrified, responded hesitantly, addressing him with caution, you don't hold the power of the notebook, you're just an outsider. Moreover, you have ties with the royal court. They won't dare touch you. and they'll believe the notebook has fallen into the hands of the court. Li Wan was clearly pleased with her response. That's right, young one. You're quick to learn. She meekly replied with humility, it's because you're so powerful. May I leave now? Suddenly, Li Wan's figure transformed into that of a monstrous giant with bulging eyes. You must become my tool. Go and find out who the leader of the rebel forces collaborating with the royal court is. At that moment, Fei Yan obediently replied, yes, if there's any news, I will immediately report back. However, Li Wan wasn't ready to let the girl go. His face darkened as he asked, so, the final question, did you come here just to find the notebook? Suddenly, right behind the girl, a figure made entirely of bones and a skull with a fiery red glow appeared. The girl, terrified, thought, this is bad. If I answer incorrectly, he'll definitely kill me. She quickly answered with complete honesty, yes, the prince told me that the notebook might have been picked up by the commoners here. They don't know who has it. If they knew how terrifying your power is, they wouldn't have sent someone like me to steal it. Just as Li Wan said, all right then, both of them suddenly turned to look in the same direction. At that moment, Li Shui appeared as if she had overheard something. Meanwhile, Li Wan was left shocked, his mouth agape, with sweat dripping down his face. When did she get here? Did she hear everything? Suddenly, Li Shui turned around and walked away, raising her hands while saying something silly like, candied hawthorn, braised pork, lion's head, sleepwalking, why did you scare me like that? Both Li Wan and Fei Yan had the same thought, what on earth was that? After Li Shui left, Li Wan told the girl, just do as we discussed. You can leave now. Don't forget what I told you, can control the energy in your body from a distance. Don't try anything funny. Feeling restrained, the girl could only obediently comply, like a cute little kitten. She nodded without a word of complaint. After receiving the order, she jumped onto the roof and disappeared. Li Wan, left standing there, thought, it's been a while since I pretended to be the bad guy. I guess I scared her enough. The next morning, before the sun had even reached its peak, a young man let out a groan. This took so much time that I didn't get enough sleep. If this were before, I would have just gone straight to your door and chopped you all up, but now I'm a married man, I have to hold back a little. Ru Li is probably up by now. He ran while whistling cheerfully, usually, I sleep in, but this time, I'm making breakfast for her, giving her a nice surprise. At the couple's home, Ru Li was surprised by what she held in her hand. What is this? She asked. The answer came, it looks like a steamed bun, but it's not a steamed bun. On the plate was a sandwich-like bun with slices of meat and fresh green vegetables inside. It looked so fresh and delicious. Li Wan explained to his wife, this is called a hamburger. It's a dish I invented. Quickly, try it and see if it's good. Ru Li obediently followed her husband's instructions. She brought the sandwich to her mouth and took a bite. Of course, she couldn't help but enjoy it. Her delight was clearly shown on her face, with a blush of pink and a look of approval, proving that the sandwich was delicious. Meanwhile, Li Wan was explaining how he had made the sandwich, the secret recipe of Li Wan, adding fresh vegetables and fragrant chicken. Let me take you to the culinary paradise. His wife was praising the taste, this is quite good. It could become popular in the great land, Ru Li said. Li Wan replied, the hospitality wasn't thorough enough. The couple was exchanging remarks when his wife asked, where did you go last night? I didn't see you come back to bed. Li Wan answered with an excuse, there was a thief at our place last night, but don't worry, I drove them away. Ru Li looked deep in thought. She remembered a previous incident at night and decided to increase security at night, she couldn't let him be in danger. Li Wan sensed his wife's anxiety. While sipping his tea, he said, don't worry, we didn't lose any money. Ru Li shouted, I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about you, you idiot. Li Wan seemed puzzled, responding, usually, you're very strict about managing the money. Ru Li crossed her arms and tried to make him understand, money is important, but the person earning it is even more important. Li Wan's face reddened as he began to understand. He said, my wife is the most important. His wife replied, trying to hide her embarrassment and concern, no one dislikes a money-making tool, so don't put yourself in danger. Money can be earned again, but you mustn't get hurt. Promise me you'll take care of yourself, okay? At the royal house, the old man was standing and questioning Fei Yan about the mission he had assigned her. Did you complete the mission smoothly? He asked. Fei Yan, sitting with her legs crossed, appeared very proud and confident. Yes, I watched all night and didn't see anything unusual. There was only a normal couple living there. The man collects rent, and his wife manages the money. I searched their whole house but didn't find the notebook anywhere. Hearing this, the old man said, all right, I understand. I've heard that your organization has a bad habit of surrendering when they can't win. He looked at her with a frightening gaze, but she remained confident and gave nothing away. Ridiculous, you don't believe in my abilities? How many people in this world can defeat me? She said this outwardly, but inside she thought, this old fox is indeed perceptive. The old man seemed to trust Fei Yan. He said, continue searching for the whereabouts of the item. As for the couple, keep an eye on them. If there's no issue, you don't need to worry about them. At that moment, she took out a knife from somewhere and played with it like a toy. I wonder if you're seriously planning a rebellion? I've heard that you're collaborating with the remnants of the rebel army. The old man turned to her with a grim expression and said, there are some things you're better off not knowing. Curiosity can kill a cat. You're a person, not a cat, right? As soon as she finished speaking, she stood up and left. Humph, I understand, no need to make such a grim face. I'm leaving now, no need to see me off. She walked out the door, waving her hand. Once outside, she thought, humph, the royal family isn't so easy to deal with. That man entrusted me with an investigation, but it turned out to be so dangerous. What a stroke of bad luck. It seems that no good fortune falls from the sky. Back inside, the son was talking to his father. Father, we still haven't found it? It looks like most of the notebook has fallen into the hands of the new emperor. The father, with a scheming expression, replied, given the situation, we must quickly create that thing. Once we have it, who's afraid of that little girl with the milk breath? Humph, Empress, let's see what you're capable of. His son wasn't to be underestimated either. He continued, I've heard that the celestial seer is now also stationed within the city. If you say so, father, I'll continue. The old man responded, so what? This could be a good thing. That person is a disaster for the great land. That girl will be so preoccupied with him that she'll forget to guard against us. Could the Empress of the great land really sleep in the same bed with the leader of the rebel army? What a farce. Once that thing is finished, the great land will belong to the royal family. As he spoke, the old man clenched his fist, displaying greed and menace. Will the royal family scheme succeed? A magnificent and grand city gate. In the distance, there were hills and mountains, rising and falling in a picturesque manner. In the foreground, vibrant flowers were bathed in sunlight, creating a beautiful scene. A kite was flying high, its string held in the hands of Ru Li. The string was managed by two different hands, guiding the kite to soar high and stay on course. At this moment, Li Wan's gaze was filled with deep affection as he watched his wife, Ru Li, while they were flying a kite together. Ru Li noticed her husband's gaze and, blushing, looked at the kite while thinking and smiling to herself, this is the world we wanted, just that it would be even more perfect without these muscle-headed fools. Somewhere nearby, a group of burly, muscular men carrying shovels and rakes had fierce expressions on their faces. They were moving around the young couple. Li Wan, surprised, asked what they were doing, and then wondered if they were all martial artists in disguise. Was there some kind of plot? While he was thinking, his wife turned to him and said, don't you know? Great Land is having some kind of railway construction done. Hearing this, Li Wan's eyes widened in surprise. A railway, he thought to himself, I suggested using qi instead of steam to power trains years ago, but I didn't actually expect it to come to fruition. Ru Li continued, yes, they say they are using qi and precious stones to power the transportation. It's incredibly fast. This will greatly speed up trade between cities. As she finished speaking, she quickly took her husband's hand and said, let's go take a look. Before Li Wan could protest, his wife had already pulled him toward the construction site. She thought to herself that this was her way of showing him the success of her orders. A massive train, with strong and healthy soldiers working on it, stood before them. The train's head was huge and magnificent. The young couple approached the train, and Li Wan exclaimed, wow! It looks incredible. He thought he never expected to see a train in this world. In the future, he planned to take Ru Li on a trip together. At that moment, Ru Li thought, even though this was designed by the rebel leader, if it's successfully completed, it will mean we can be together even more. Both of them gazed at the train with different thoughts, but with a shared desire to be with the person they loved. As they were focused on the train, a sudden voice startled them. What a coincidence to run into you two here. Did you come here on purpose to see my new project? It was the familiar face of Li Zuj, who always seemed to appear in these chance encounters. Li Wan turned and asked, aren't you working in the tavern? Li Zuj answered innocently and naively, working in the tavern? The owner introduced me here, the salary isn't bad. As she finished speaking, Li Wan seemed to catch on. You mean you were begging to switch jobs? But this time, it's not me begging, the owner is begging me to change jobs. As she spoke, her eyes and limbs vividly described the situation. You say I just happened to break a few bowls, miscalculate the bills, and hit a few customers. She recalled the scenes of her grabbing a customer by the collar and preparing to punch them, while the tavern owner stood behind, pleading helplessly, "Oh my God, please, give our tavern a chance to survive." At this moment, the Li Wan couple felt utterly helpless. "I'm amazed at how you're still alive after all that," Li Wan remarked. She responded with a proud look, "Sir, you underestimate me. I come from a prestigious family and received a high-quality education." Li Wan quickly replied, "If you're making money now, when will you pay back the rent?" The girl answered confidently, "Of course. I'll definitely earn enough money by tomorrow. I'm off to work now. Goodbye." She cheerfully waved goodbye to the couple and left. Watching her go, Li Wan thought, so this young lady comes from a distinguished background, but how did she end up in such a state? He looked down at where Li Zuj was working. She was instructing the workers at the front of the train, asking them to put the energy-infused minerals into place. Li Wan said, although Li Zuj's work is usually unreliable, this kind of machinery operation shouldn't have any issues. His wife responded confidently, "Of course. The officials of Great Land are very reliable. We must trust the court." As soon as she finished speaking, the sight before them was of the train appearing to be on fire. Smoke and loud bangs erupted. "Put out the fire quickly. Who put the energy-infused minerals so close to the steam pipe? All our efforts have been in vain." The soldier's eyes widened in shock and regret. Li Zuj, covered in dirt and smoke of her own making, could only smile sheepishly. She turned to the couple's helpless expressions and didn't know what else to say. Then, she suddenly knelt before the couple, begging, "Please, give me a few more days to pay the rent." Li Wan subtly signaled his wife to notice and turned to make the request. His wife, understanding the hint, thought to herself, "It won't work." Suddenly, a panic scream from Ru Li, "You!" She yelled while looking down at her feet, realizing the source of her alarm was Li Zuj, who had quickly moved to her and was now kneeling, clutching her legs tightly. "Ru Li, you're the best. You're like a celestial being descended from heaven. Please save me." Seeing Li Zuj's pitiful yet endearing face, Ru Li's heart softened. She reluctantly closed her eyes and said in a resigned tone, "All right, I'll give you a little more time to pay the rent." Upon hearing this, Li Zuj immediately expressed her gratitude and joy. "Thank you so much, Ru Li and the landlord. I don't have much to offer in return, but if you come to my place today, I'll host you." As the sun began to set, casting its final rays on the rooftops, she cheerfully invited them into her rented home. "Welcome to my warm and cozy home," she announced. When the door opened, no one expected the scene behind it: trash bags, a battered broom on the floor, clothes thrown into a basket, and general disarray. The sight once again left the Li Wan couple feeling helpless and speechless. They couldn't find the words when faced with the unwashed clothes, unfolded bedding, and dirty dishes still on the bed. Li Wan could only ask, "I remember when we first rented this place, it wasn't like this." Li Zuj, with an innocent yet confident demeanor, replied, "I designed it this way for convenience." Her response enraged Li Wan, who shouted in frustration, "You're just too lazy to clean." While they were arguing, Ru Li noticed a blue garment peeking out of a closet. Recognizing it from her family, she realized it was from her own household. Knowing she shouldn't reveal this, Ru Li calmly said, "I don't need this kind of thing. You can keep it for yourself." Li Zuj, flustered, immediately tied a headscarf around her head, showing a determined expression. She said with a serious face, "Although I can't give you that garment, to repay your kindness, I've decided to cook a meal for you both." Li Zuj's determination to cook a meal provided a small sense of relief for the Li Wan couple, though they still harbored doubts about her cooking skills. Li Wan, still skeptical about Li Zuj's cooking, whispered to his wife that based on the manga, there was a high chance she would cook something terrible. Ru Li, unfamiliar with the manga and the concept of bad cooking, looked at her husband with a puzzled expression. When Li Zuj served the hot and beautifully presented dishes, both husband and wife were taken aback by the change. The dishes were arranged attractively and varied, causing astonishment on their faces. Li Zuj proudly declared that these were her specialties and irresistibly good, despite her previous poor impression regarding cleanliness. Li Wan couldn't help but compliment that if the new emperor tasted this food, Li Zuj might be selected for the imperial kitchen. Ru Li agreed, and the couple exchanged satisfied smiles as they enjoyed the delicious meal. Li Zuj, sitting opposite them, rested her chin on her hand and observed them with suspicion, wondering if the landlord was indeed the celestial being she was seeking. She pondered the opportunity, hoping that today would be a chance to confirm this. She watched as Li Wan fed a delicious piece of meat to his wife. Seeing them so happy and romantic, she thought that confronting him directly might be the best approach. Would Li Wan reveal his true identity to Li Zuj? As evening fell and the sunset flickered behind the rooftops, the table was set with sumptuous and beautiful dishes. The Li Wan couple continued to enjoy the delicious food. Suddenly, Li Zuj, with a serious expression, asked, "Landlord, how did you manage to defeat those people?" As soon as the question was asked, Li Wan choked on his food and spat it out. His wife looked bewildered, her face full of question marks. Li Wan regained his composure, laughed, and replied casually, saying that it was just because those people were inexperienced, and even he couldn't defeat them. As Li Wan spoke, Ru Li was also listening beside him. He was turned towards his wife, looking straight into her face, and shouted, "When have you ever fought with others? What if you get injured? Your face is full of fear, with sweat dripping down. It's just a small brawl, you didn't actually fight, and those people aren't very skilled." At this moment, realizing something, Li Zuj quickly intervened to defend the landlord. "That's right, they are all very weak. If I were to make a move, they wouldn't be able to withstand even one strike." It seemed that Li Zuj's words had calmed Ru Li. She simply told her husband that if there were any troubles in the future, he should directly contact the Six Doors agency and not handle things himself. Of course, with a husband as devoted as Li Wan, he would obediently listen to her. He scratched his head and smiled benignly. "I understand, my dear, I'll follow your advice." Not stopping there, Li Zuj continued to ask Li Wan questions. She then asked, "How did the landlord end up living in the capital?" As she asked, she thought that asking directly might scare Ru Li, so she changed her approach. Li Wan answered Li Zuj's question sincerely. "Previously, I had no place to go, so I just came to the capital for a while. I intended to leave after some time, but after meeting Ru Li, I decided to stay." As soon as he finished speaking, his wife turned to him with sparkling eyes and cheeks gradually turning redder. Li Zuj, surprised, asked further, "Does Ru Li matter more than anything else?" A thought arose that, compared to the wishes of many, sincere feelings are more important. Li Wan continued to speak with increasing sincerity. "Previously, I really wanted to go back home, but now I can't let go. For me now, Ru Li is everything." The affectionate eyes and contentment between the two were evident. Their tightly held hands and bashfulness indicated a deepening love. At this moment, Li Zuj could only watch the two of them, lost in their gaze, unsure of what to say or ask next. Li Wan then asked her, "Is the past very important to you?" Li Zuj bowed her head as if disappointed. "I don't know. I've only heard my father talk about it, so I've always been searching." She continued with tearful eyes. "Perhaps I have a painful memory. I don't know why my family suddenly disappeared. I just want to know the reason why this happened." As she was about to cry, Li Wan's words suddenly made her come to her senses. "Then just maintain things as they are." She looked up at Li Wan with pure surprise and said, "Huh?" Li Wan continued as if trying to explain to her. "Life is ultimately a path that must be traveled. On this rugged path, it takes a lot of time to pass through. Valuing what you have now is the most important thing. Don't let yourself sink into the past. If you need anything, you can come to me, and I will protect you." Smiling kindly and giving a reassuring hint, he also offered words of comfort. This could be the most reliable guarantee in the world. "So, can you waive my rent for next year?" she asked, laughing loudly. The landlord couple then replied in unison, loud and clear, "No." The sound of summer insects buzzing filled the air, with cicadas clinging to the tree trunks and chirping loudly in the early morning. Beneath the tree, a newlywed couple sat, seemingly resting and relaxing after a series of hot days. He turned to look at his wife, who was holding a fan. She was leisurely and gently fanning herself. Suddenly, she turned to him and asked, "How come you're still so calm? Don't you feel the heat?" He smiled at his wife and answered softly, "I don't feel hot at all, it's quite cool. You're fanning, so I get to enjoy it too." Suddenly, the fan in Ru Li's hand stopped. From somewhere, a stronger, louder breeze started blowing towards her. Damn it! It turned out he had snatched the fan from her to fan his wife himself. She felt a bit of relief from the heat in this sweltering weather. She laughed and added, "A bit of effort from the other side," and a voice came saying, "As you command, my dear." Surprise flashed across Li Wan's face. It seemed there was something that caught him off guard. It was like a cold breeze. Li Zuj appeared with an ice cream and something shiny in her hands. "Good morning, Mr. Landlord. It's really hot today." Li Wan asked her with curiosity. "Wait a minute, what's that you're holding?" He pointed to the object she was carrying. "This is ice crystal. Didn't Mr. Landlord know about this?" Such a lack of knowledge. But it wasn't the ice crystal that was of interest, it was what she was holding in her other hand. Li Zuj held it out in front of him. This is ice essence, a type of mineral energy that continuously generates cold air. I'm giving this to you as a gift. Thank you for waiving my rent for a year. Li Wan accepted the gift she presented to him and his wife. She looked very pleased today. Was there something good happening? She replied with a clear and proud voice. I've been reinstated to my official position. Not only am I not held responsible, but I've also been assigned a lighter job. As soon as she heard what she had said, Ru Li smiled gently and told her. Then you should cherish this opportunity and not cause any more trouble. In her thoughts, she mused. But isn't this because of me? Come and thank me quickly. Just as she finished her thought, her husband and Li Zuj laughed and said. Indeed, it seems that the official up here must be very foolish. Upon hearing this, Ru Li could only feel anger. Her face darkened as if doused with a bucket of cold water. Meanwhile, Li Zuj added. I think so too, they must be the type who sees money as trash. As soon as she finished speaking, her fate took another turn. The next day, Li Zuj was assigned to work under the blazing sun, cleaning bricks. For a month, it seemed she hadn't realized her fate had changed. She instead cheerfully bade farewell. I'm leaving now, Mr. Landlord. At that moment, Li Wan's mind was filled with rosy dreams. That night, he placed the ice essence at the head of the bed. This way, Ru Li wouldn't fear the heat. The feng shui of the place was relatively good, and he didn't expect any strange occurrences. Ru Li turned to her husband and asked. What are you smiling about? He quickly responded, scratching his head with an innocent smile. Nothing much, there have been so many new things lately, and life is getting better and better. She smiled contentedly and replied. That's natural, Great Land is no longer the same as before. As she spoke, she felt proud. Isn't it because I govern well? Suddenly, he handed the ice essence to his wife. Take this ice essence. There's only one piece, and the cold air can't travel too far. Ru Li looked at the blue ice essence. It seemed she wanted to say something, and indeed she extended her hand to accept it and said. You silly, as long as we're close to each other, that's enough. She said this with a gentle smile, and the atmosphere turned sweet and rosy. She tightly held her husband's hand, with the ice essence nestled between their joined hands. At that moment, he was filled with boundless happiness. Beneath the tree bathed in sunlight, the bright summer rays filter through the gaps in the leaves. At the base of the tree, a pair of lovebirds sit with their heads resting against each other, hands tightly clasped, embodying a romantic vision that many people long for. On a bustling morning, the busy street is lined with stalls displaying a variety of enticing and eye-catching foods. Fei Yan, who has arrived in the capital without having a decent meal, decides. I need to find a good place to eat now, I'll have a meal and then set off immediately. In front of her is a seemingly upscale restaurant. She stands there, hands on her hips, and says. This is the place. I can't believe I might run into him here. She steps inside the restaurant, greeted by the staff who invite her to sit. At this moment, she thinks to herself, the saying goes, the most dangerous place is the safest. This place doesn't seem wealthy. Last time I came here, it must have been a special occasion. After only a few days, he surely doesn't have money left to come here. As these thoughts cross her mind, a loud shout rings out. Waiter, bring me another table of food. Hearing the familiar voice, she looks toward the source of the call. It turns out to be him, he's having breakfast with his wife. He smiles cheerfully as he orders another dish of what she initially mistakes as trash mixed with chicken, but turns out to be spicy stir-fried chicken. At this moment, Fei Yan realizes who it is. She is taken aback, her mouth agape and sweat running down her cheeks. Oh my God, how is he still here? Her astonishment leads her to watch the couple enjoying each other's company. Soon, the dishes are served, delicious and visually appealing. From her perspective, seeing the food, she questions in her mind whether this place is indeed his establishment. After pondering for a while, a familiar voice interrupts her thoughts. Oh, what a coincidence. I finished my work and came here to eat. Hearing the voice, she recognizes it as Li Wan. She looks up and responds hesitantly. Yes, it's here, but I'm still a bit short of making a significant breakthrough. After she speaks, Li Wan sits down at her table, interlocking his fingers on the table with a contemplative expression. So, any good news? Tell me a little about it. At this moment, he thinks to himself. Does she think I'm a fool? She's clearly preparing to run away. As he contemplates, he looks directly at her, causing her to hesitate and struggle to speak. Eventually, she resigns to the fact that she can't escape. Fine, I'll consider it my bad luck. You told me to investigate the rebel army, but I have no results. Do whatever you want with me. She finishes speaking with a deep sigh of frustration. Li Wan, seeing through her, says. I didn't expect this, it seems I overestimated you. At this moment, she had no choice but to demean herself further. Yes, 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 I am useless. He turned away and, unable to forgive her, continued. Then I'll assign you a less difficult task. Complete it, and I'll let you go free. She sat there, resigned and obedient. Tell me what to do. I'm already in this situation, what other choice do I have? Li Wan, smiling, assigned the task. This task seems fairly straightforward. Do you know the Dragon Mountain Temple? Go there and find Monk Kongwon. Tell him that the situation has progressed to the next stage, ask him to write down the intelligence from you, and then bring it to me. Fei Yan, upon hearing Li Wan's words, slammed her hand on the table in frustration and shouted. What are you kidding me? Everyone knows that Monk Kongwon understands the affairs of the capital, but who can actually get information from him? Do you take me for a fool? She shouted directly at him, her anger clearly making it difficult for Fei Yan to complete the task. Li Wan remained calm, sitting with a relaxed demeanor and a broad smile, and replied calmly. Isn't it Monk Kongwon? Just mention my name. With that, his expression shifted from confidence to knowing that everything would succeed. After assigning the task, he returned to his meal with his wife. Ru Li, propping her chin on her hand, looked at her husband and asked. Where did you go just now? Li Wan scratched his head and smiled. Nothing much, just ran into an acquaintance and stopped to say hello. We should leave too, there seem to be many new items in the Western market. He smiled, trying to coax his wife out of the place. However, Ru Li asked. What's new? The Western market is so far. If not, I can carry you there. Upon hearing this, she replied with irritation. Do you see me as cargo? Despite her words, she didn't dare refuse. The sky seemed to darken, and the couple paid their bill, apparently heading towards the Western market. As they had just taken a few steps out the door, raindrops began to fall on Li Wan. The sky was raining, and the couple looked up at the falling rain with helplessness. Li Wan said. The weather is really unusual today. The rain changed from a light drizzle to a heavy downpour. While standing helplessly under the rain, the restaurant staff ran out with 2 umbrellas. To thank you for your frequent visits, please accept these umbrellas as a gift. Hearing this, Li Wan turned around with a cheerful face and replied. 1 umbrella is enough. He quickly took one of the umbrellas and walked alongside his wife. The rain showed no sign of letting up. Under the umbrella, the couple sighed in helplessness. Who would have thought that they would forget to bring an umbrella on such an unusual rainy day? After a moment, Ru Li turned to her husband and asked. What's wrong? You're sighing suddenly. Is something happening? Li Wan looked down at his wife with a gentle and sincere expression. Nothing, it's just the rain making me a bit sentimental. I never thought I would have a life like this. Ru Li looked at her husband with curious surprise about his past. Li Wan continued to gaze into the distance, as if reflecting on his past experiences. I used to be in a very dire situation. If I had met you back then, I might have missed out. I used to see myself as the center of the world, believing that everything I did was just. He continued, his voice full of reflection. In the past, I fought alone against dozens of soldiers surrounding me. One swing of my sword would make blood spray into the air like falling raindrops. I was blind to the fact that everything I did was right, my face full of killing intent, my sword strikes relentless with blood spurting like fire. I could take down hundreds of soldiers around me, even with an imperfect body and a small sword. Looking at his blood-stained hands, he continued. But when I looked back, I realized I was wrong, terribly wrong. Those I considered comrades, close brothers, were actually not on the same path as me. They, whom I trusted, turned out to be demons staring at me, leaving me alone in the darkness. His heartfelt words moved Ru Li deeply. Suddenly, she reached up with her small, delicate hand to wipe the tears from his face. Li Wan felt touched and pressed his forehead against hers. Ru Li spoke with a sweet and slightly shy tone. But now you are no longer alone. Because I will always be by your side. The image of the affectionate couple in the rain seemed to gradually fade as the sun began to shine. Li Wan held his wife's hand tightly and said, I know, and I will never let you go. Their loving gazes met, and they looked at each other with deep affection. Ru Li looked at her husband and said aloud, Well, it's not too bad being with you. But remember, if you ever betray me, I'll make sure to lock you up. Li Wan maintained his tender gaze and softly replied to Ru Li, I will absolutely never betray you. Ru Li, feeling satisfied, replied, That's good to hear. The sun is coming out, and the hot rays after the storm are slowly shining on the tall buildings. It's the first time I've heard you mention your past. Li Wan smiled with a naive grin. Ha, maybe we can talk about it more another time. But in his mind, serious thoughts about the future were forming. He was worried about an impending conflict and the ongoing negotiations with the royal family. Meanwhile, in a place where snow was falling on the high hills, a man and a dignified woman were discussing serious matters. Their eyes, filled with the fire of vengeance, suggested that a war might be approaching. That evening, the sky was beautiful with a full moon and twinkling stars. Fei Yan, with a determined expression, leaped across the rooftops and stopped in front of the abbot's room. The door was open, and the light was still on, indicating that the old monk was still studying Buddhist scriptures. Suddenly, Fei Yan kicked the door open and shouted, "Abbot Kong Wen, someone has sent me to deliver a message to you." The monk was startled and stared in shock at the figure behind him. Fei Yan saw the monk holding a pink-covered book titled 69 Meditation Positions, with a heart crossed out and a naked boy on the cover. Fei Yan noticed the monk's face darkening and sweat dripping down, and she asked, "Huh? What's going on?" Outraged by the scene, Fei Yan pointed at the monk and shouted, "Master! Aren't you supposed to be a high-level monk? How can you be looking at such thing?" It seemed that the old monk had regained his composure. He placed his hands in front of his beard, cleared his throat, and responded calmly, "You misunderstand. This is merely a method for cultivating concentration." With that, the old monk quickly threw the book into the blazing fire. "Amitabha Buddha, once again I have successfully resisted temptation. My enlightenment has taken another step forward." Though he appeared calm in front of the young woman, inside, the monk was crying silently, having just reached an interesting part of the book that he couldn't linger over. Fei Yan seemed to have moved on to the main issue. The abbot looked at her with a multitude of question marks. "What is the matter?" She shouted loudly and pointed at the burning book. The monk's hand had caught fire from the flames that had spread from the book and up his hand. The monk was startled and shouted loudly, startling even the sleeping leaves. After bandaging his hand, the monk asked her. The two of them sat across from each other at a small table. This time, it seemed that they had both become serious about the matter. "May I ask who commissioned you to deliver the message?" The girl, holding a cup of water, was now searching her memory and said, "If I remember correctly, his name is Li Wan." At the mention of the name, the monk spat out the water he had just put in his mouth, causing the girl to have more questions about his reaction. The old monk then asked, "What does he want to know?" Fei Yan answered straightforwardly, "He wants you to provide him with the most recent situation in the capital." As she sipped her water and watched the old monk, she noticed him pulling out paper and a pen, preparing to write something. This action made her wonder about his status, given the importance of the information. She was astonished and asked, "Based on the abbot's reaction, what is his actual status?" The old monk remained composed as he wrote the information down on the paper, replying, "The Buddha teaches that one should not speak of such things. Rest assured, if he does not harm you directly, he will not do so in the future." As he finished rolling up the paper, the girl asked, "Master, why are you involved with someone as ruthless as him?" The monk simply smiled and answered, "Because he carries compassion in his heart." The girl's eyes lit up, and she clapped her hands together, saying, "Indeed. Helping others to the underworld and reincarnating them, truly great compassion." The news was written and ready, and the monk handed the paper to the girl to deliver to Li Wan. As she took the note, she asked, "Who exactly is this person? I've never heard of anyone like him. Could he be part of the rebel forces?" The next morning, Li Wan was stretching outside his home, feeling the pleasant weather. He yawned and said, "Maybe I should sleep a bit longer." Suddenly, he heard snoring. Turning around, he saw Li Zuj lying there, drooling and still asleep. He shook his head. "What a poor sleeping posture. Came here to eat and didn't even go back last night." He pinched her cheek and called out, "Wake up, Li Zuj." But it seemed ineffective. She just turned over and continued sleeping. "I'm still eating, don't bother me." Li Wan was preoccupied with thoughts of food. Just then, an aura of energy alerted him to someone's arrival. It was her. Before she could knock, Li Wan had already opened the door. Surprised by her presence, they spoke in a private spot. Li Wan commented, "This time, your efficiency is impressive." Fei Yan proudly presented the letter and said, "Of course. I am a professional. Here's the information you wanted." He took the letter and read it quietly. It turned out that the royal family wanted to unite various influential families to confront the new emperor. They planned to use part of the rebel forces as their muscle, though the leader of this faction remained unknown even in the documents. The Tianxiang Pavilion, backed by the royal family, was their meeting place. After reading, he looked up at her and said, "Don't get any ideas. Just because I'm a bit strong, a bit handsome, and a bit wealthy, doesn't mean you can take advantage of me." She fumed and retorted, "What do you mean by that? You're just slightly stronger, a bit more handsome, and a bit richer. Without those things, what do you have? Despite Fei Yan's rising anger, he responded calmly and gently. Well, flattering me so much must mean you need something from me, right? From her initial anger, she shifted to a more obedient and gentle demeanor. Yes, esteemed master. I have another task and may need to stay in the capital for a while longer. If I happen to encounter any danger, I hope you can assist me. Hearing this, Li Wan responded confidently with a smile. Rest assured. In Great Land's Zhuke sect, North Gate 36 Caves, everyone knows me. If there's any danger, just mention my name. With that, her eyes lit up with immense gratitude as she expressed. Esteemed master, I have nothing to offer in return, so I can only repay your kindness with my body. As she spoke, she jumped up, intending to leap into Li Wan's arms. Before she could do so, she was kicked in the face. Was she dreaming? She smiled sweetly like a cat. Haha, just kidding. Esteemed master, how could a humble person like me be worthy of your attention? Deep inside, she thought. Yes, if you weren't more formidable than me, I would definitely make you regret it. As Li Wan was leaving, he added. How could you possibly be as beautiful as my wife? She then added with irritation. Well, what's the use of a pretty face? At least my skin is thicker than hers. With that, she closed the door and went inside. Li Wan's wife and Li Zuj were standing in the yard, looking at him. Li Zuj, holding a steamed bun in her mouth, said, Master, do you know how to get back home? You smell entirely like women. Approaching them, Li Wan pretended to scratch his head innocently. Oh, you saw everything, huh? Little girl, I was just giving her directions, so she came to thank me. Instead of getting upset like before, Ru Li smiled warmly and replied gently. You don't need to explain it so clearly. Li Wan, thinking he had won her over, laughed heartily. Haha, my wife truly trusts me. At that moment, she began to get angry. She shouted at him. It's because of you. No matter what you say, I find it unpleasant. In the midst of the tense atmosphere, Li Zuj tried to lighten the mood with a joking tone. And what about me? Am I also considered a young lady? Isn't Cho's sister unhappy? Ru Li responded to her. You are very healthy, but as for her, she added with a questioning tone, healthy? Are you trying to encourage me? Ah, why does it feel like you're insulting me? Ru Li continued. Don't be fooled just because someone is beautiful. If they deceive you, Li Wan will listen very attentively. Li Wan asked further. So, what will happen? You'll find out that you've already been completely deceived by me, she said, staring intently at her husband. In a different situation, Fei Yan had arrived at another location in the capital. She stood in front of a house and said, Big brother, the 36th branch of the Great Land's Vermilion Bird sect, his friends are here? The person he recommended must be a legendary expert. This time, I've struck gold. Without hesitation, she swiftly approached the door and opened it with her hand. As she swung the door open, she stood with a commanding presence. Brothers, I need your help. Li Wan sent me here. At that moment, the large warriors sitting in the darkness looked at her at the door. One of them, seated on a box, said, Miss, rest assured, leave it to us. At this point, she sensed something. She felt the aura was incredibly strong, blending seamlessly with the surrounding darkness. Could this be the legendary 4 heavenly kings of darkness? Suddenly, those people carried a coffin on their shoulders and spoke in unison. May I ask if it is your father or mother who has passed away? We specialize in carrying coffins and guarantee that you will be satisfied. Currently, we have a promotion for our services, which will be available for your whole family. You can use it when the time comes. Upon hearing this, she felt as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown over her. She felt frozen and cursed Li Wan, that wretched bastard. That evening, a magnificent palace, about 4 stories high, with lanterns hanging in rows from above, created a dazzling and splendid entrance. Everyone knew that the royal family was the entertainment mogul of the capital, and the Red Star Lounge was the crown jewel of their entertainment ventures. Beautiful young women gently guided the men and young masters in and out of the establishment. There were 3 young masters standing there. The one in the middle appeared to be a prominent scion of the capital. He wore a luxurious hat, indicating that he was a wealthy playboy. 2 attendants accompanied him. I've spent 100 taels and still can't see Miss Hualien. What use is my investment now? At this moment, the elderly lady standing there responded directly. With 100 taels, why not just ask for a meal? Miss Hualien is an entertainer, not a courtesan. If you want to see Miss Hualien but don't have the money, there's still a way, work for us. The elderly lady spoke with a smile to the 3 young masters. Unbeknownst to her, someone had just flown over the roof behind her. Thud. The footsteps suddenly stopped at a place near the window of the building. A masked man, none other than Li Wan, had arrived. Li Wan entered a room, which was the Tianxiang Pavilion. he said, members of the royal family come here every week. As he finished speaking, footsteps from outside grew louder. At this moment, his eyes lit up, here they come. The door opened, and the two of them walked into the room, conversing naturally without any precautions. Brother, Miss Hualien will arrive soon. This time, don't let her charm distract you and ruin the important mission. Rest assured, I know how to handle things. He then turned to his younger brother and said, the task assigned by father is extremely important. We must not let down the trust he has in us. Listening to you, his younger brother continued, this time we have the trump card. We must convince the local militia to join us. Suddenly, Li Wan emerged from somewhere and asked, what trump card? Tell me more. The two brothers were startled and exclaimed, who are you? Miss Hualien has hidden a man? The senior brother then pointed a finger directly at Li Wan and shouted, how dare you come to our royal territory and show off? I think you're asking for trouble. Li Wan, however, remained unflustered. Instead, he responded with a sharp gaze, if you truly want to know, I'm willing to share. I am the one who dismantles the royal family. The shouting from upstairs, with cries of A, caught the attention of the servants, but they assumed such commotion must be from a dispute between royal princes. One of them remarked, what do you know? They are close brothers, surely just sparring with each other. Believing this, no one dared to go upstairs to check. Meanwhile, the two princes upstairs were sprawled on the floor, looking miserable with missing teeth, blood streaming from their noses down to their chins. Every part of their faces was bruised. Li Wan stood with his arms crossed, looking at them and said, such tough mouths, and after being beaten like this, still no useful information. He left them lying there and went on his way. Back at home, his wife stood there questioning him, where have you been wandering around so late? Li Wan quickly retrieved some sparklers he had bought, intending to have a little fun with her. The sparklers emitted beautiful, dazzling lights. Ru Li looked at the sparklers and, with a serious expression, said to her husband, there is a major issue I've kept from you. Li Wan, taking her seriously, asked, what is it? Ru Li replied, I just want you to know, but I can't tell you for now. Even though I've hidden it from you, I never intended to deceive you. If you find out one day, I absolutely won't allow you to divorce me. It seemed Ru Li feared that her husband might discover her true identity one day. Li Wan responded firmly, from the very first day, I never considered divorcing you. Ru Li looked at him with hope and trust in her eyes and replied, I think so too. That night, inside the noble family's residence, behind the tightly locked gates, a furious voice banged his hands on the table, expressing his rage, damn it, this is infuriating. How dare they, the royal family, touch us? They don't take me seriously at all. It turned out that the old man was furious after hearing his son's report. His eldest son, with hands clasped in respect, reported, Father, elder brother, the second and third brothers have their meridians severed. They are likely to become crippled in the future. That person is truly ruthless. In front of everyone, the son maintained a respectful demeanor, but his mind was filled with malicious thoughts. The family fortune is now mine, and you should depart soon, old man, was the cruel thought that flashed in his mind. Suddenly, a voice interrupted, Master of the house, there's no need to be angry. Leave this matter to me. Startled and surprised, the old man exclaimed, Master Jia, you've arrived. An old man with great strength and surrounded by a powerful aura stood before him. His eyes shone with a fierce blue light, looking both menacing and formidable. Indeed, my divine skills have reached a high level now. There's no better time to test them, the old man declared. The royal family's authority was not to be trampled upon. While he stood there addressing the royal family, he had different thoughts in his head. This is probably just a minor opponent. If I handle it well, I could earn a considerable reward. Would he be able to succeed and defeat Li Wan? The next morning, before the sun had risen in the palace, Ru Li sat on the throne, observing the dancers performing their intricate routines. This spectacle made the attendant beside her ponder, Your Majesty, why have you suddenly invited dancers? And why are you so amused? Could it be? The attendant had rather unsavory thoughts. She imagined a scenario full of romantic possibilities and saw Ru Li lifting her chin and saying, Shao say, today you will come to the bedchamber. The image of two young women made her blush deeply and then filled her with delight, Your Majesty clearly favors women, my chance has arrived. I can now ascend to the peak of my life. She was so overjoyed that she laughed to herself, even to the point of a nosebleed, but continued to laugh heartily. This only deepened Ru Li's confusion about the attendant's actions. Ru Li watched the dance and thought, so that's how dancing is done. When I return, I'll show that fool how it's done. In the early morning light, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, a sense of shyness enveloped the quiet home of Li Wan and his wife. So, how do I look? She asked, wearing a short, revealing blue dress that was quite alluring. Her husband, smiling brightly, rushed over and said, "Of course you look beautiful. My wife looks amazing no matter what she wears." Encouraged by his response, she said, "The best part is still to come." She looked at her husband with eager eyes, her cheeks flushed and even more enchanting. She seemed to be contemplating something, anticipating the moment when this fool would see the results of her practice over the past few days. Li Wan supported his wife as she leaned back, their eyes meeting with a blend of shyness and embarrassment. Ru Li's legs were lifted into the air. As expected of my wife, she already knows the next move without needing any instruction, he thought, gazing at her lovingly. Suddenly, she slapped him with a hint of annoyance and said, "You talk too much." The dance had ended, and night had fallen over the imperial palace. 2 patrolling soldiers were carrying lanterns to light their way, chatting as they walked. "Old Wang, I can't stand it anymore. The lady has been constantly trying to seduce me. What should I do?" one soldier asked. The other responded, "What's there to question? If the head of the household finds out, he'll definitely throw us to the dogs." As they sighed in concern, suddenly there was a loud crash from the roof. One of the soldiers fell from the sky, landing right before them. The 2 soldiers screamed in fear, "What's going on?" Before them stood a dark figure shrouded in white mist, with a menacing presence. The figure demanded, "A bunch of ill-mannered fools. Hurry up and get your master out here." At this moment, 2 soldiers drew their swords and shouted authoritatively, "Who are you to dare attack the royal family?" Li Wan turned around, and with his mask on, he appeared in full view. As he turned, he introduced himself formally, saying, "I am your grandfather," while staring at the 2 soldiers with a fiery gaze. "What will happen next?" The old man, wrapped in a warm fur coat, was sitting at his desk with a book in front of him. Suddenly, a gentle voice spoke up, "Husband, you've worked hard. Go to bed and rest early." It turned out that the royal lady and her tiny son were standing by his desk. She continued, "I've specially made a bowl of hot nourishing soup for you. You should drink some." Then she quickly urged her tiny son, "Hurry and bring it to your father." The little boy, holding the bowl of soup, had a dark face. When he looked up, only his eyes and teeth shone brightly. He called out, "Father," and held up the bowl of soup his mother had prepared. The old man could only smile with the wrinkles on his face, saying, "I'm sorry for troubling you, my dear. Heaven truly favors me, not only giving me a virtuous wife but also a chubby little boy." As he finished speaking, the young and beautiful wife approached him more closely, smiling gently and saying, "Husband, let me feed you." "Dai Huang, it's time to take your medicine," she said as she took a spoon from the bowl and prepared to feed the old man. Just as the 2 were being affectionate, a servant came in to report, "It's not good, master. There's a thief breaking in." Upon hearing this, the old master remained calm, asking how many thieves had come. The servant raised a single finger and innocently replied, "Just one." The old master, now relieved, asked, "Just one? Was there really a need to panic?" The servant's face darkened as he replied, "Master, but the situation." This made the old master furious, and he shouted, "If you panic like that, what kind of example are you setting? It's just one person, yet look at how terrified you are. Don't disturb the peaceful time of our household." Then he yelled even louder, "He can even turn my entire mansion upside down?" The servant turned away, his face darkening further as he thought, he really did turn the place upside down. The old master continued, "Over the years, I've only had to deal with a petty thief. What can one thief do?" Meanwhile, in front of Li Wan were towering muscular men, each about 3 or 4 times his size. Some wielded swords, others carried knives, their faces covered in scars. The biggest among them stood opposite Li Wan and sneered, "Kid, you managed to barge in here, so it seems you're not bad. But unfortunately, you've run into the strongest member of our clan, a legend in these parts." He continued with a smug expression, "The strength of a legendary fighter like me, just hearing my name is enough to send even the bravest warriors running." Li Wan stood there, stunned and speechless, before he could react. Suddenly, the royal guard swarmed him like an angry hive. "You fool, prepare to pay for your stupidity. Die," they shouted. Li Wan simply stared at them with his eyes, as if he was about to unleash a powerful move. The next moment, there were loud, agonized screams, "Ah! Ah!" which the old master and his beautiful wife could hear clearly from inside their room. The wife, with sweat running down her face, said to her husband, outside, "The screams, it's terrible. It's finally stopped." The old master, still holding his bowl of medicine, calmly drank it and spoke with a self-satisfied tone, "Serves him right for daring to break into the royal mansion. He should be chopped into 1,000 pieces. If you think about it, that business should be done by now, right?" he asked his wife. She shyly and softly replied, but, could that really pose a threat to the emperor? The old man's face darkened as he said, yes, once this construction is completed, not only the emperor but even those from the rebel army will be easily dealt with. Upon hearing this, his wife raised her hand as if she were frightened. This person is despicable. Be quiet, my dear. I've heard that Jiahua is in the capital. Hearing his wife's words, the old man could only laugh dismissively, saying, ha ha ha, my dear, you're overthinking. Jiahua has been missing for a year, he's probably dead in some corner by now. Just as he finished speaking, a massive force slammed into the walls of the old man's room. His wife cowered behind him, and the old man could only react in shock, shouting, what's going on? Is there an assassin? The white smoke dissipated, revealing the soldiers who had attacked Li Wan earlier, now lying on top of each other with their mouths agape. The old man was astonished and exclaimed, these are top experts from the great land, yet they've been reduced to mere ragdolls. Li Wan appeared with a fist clenched tightly in his hand and asked, what could excite you so much? Is it the elixir of immortality? His eyes were filled with a fierce glint as he addressed the old man. Suddenly, he looked in another direction as a sound caught his attention. Indeed, a large hand with blue mystical patterns was reaching out above him. Boom! A loud noise erupted from the upper floor of the Huang's residence. Master, step back. This thief's strength is no ordinary matter. The old man, having reached a high level of cultivation, stepped forward to protect the old man and his wife as if he were their shield. Thinking that he had expelled Li Wan from the royal family, the old man was stunned to find that Li Wan was still behind the white smoke. Naturally, as the smoke cleared, Li Wan reappeared, causing the old man to slump helplessly to the ground. The old man stood up, facing Li Wan, and said, you are also a top martial artist. If you don't want to die here, you better leave obediently. He gathered all his cultivated power and struck Li Wan with a forceful palm, but Li Wan remained unharmed. Sensing that the opponent's martial skills were on par with his own, the old man asked, what is your relationship with the emperor? Li Wan smirked, his gaze fixed on the old man, and replied, you're about to retire and go into seclusion. With just your abilities, thinking you can be domineering in the capital is not so simple. The old man asked, puzzled, unless you are someone from the emperor? Is there a special relationship between you and the emperor? Internally, he thought with fear, are there such experts in the capital? Has she discovered our plan? Li Wan laughed and joked, your emperor is coveting my body. What kind of relationship do you think that is? His words were meant to tarnish the emperor's reputation, causing the old man to exclaim in shock, the emperor covets your body? The old man thought, what nonsense is this person spouting? Only a fool would believe that. What is he trying to do? Stall for time or distract me with some scheme? Li Wan raised a finger, as if to provoke him further, saying, come on, stop wasting time. Show me what you've got. This provocation enraged the old man, making him tremble with anger. Young man, are you seeking death? Do you think that was all my strength? To control my overwhelming power, I usually have to seal it. Today, I will lift those restrictions. As he finished speaking, he unleashed his full power, but it did not faze Li Wan. Instead, Li Wan put his hands on his head in a gesture of helplessness and sighed, do you think you're the ruler of this universe? The old man swung his robe and released his power, declaring loudly, let me show you what it means to have higher mountains beyond the mountains. Don't think that Qianhai is the only troublesome person in the capital. Li Wan remained calm and replied, well, I find you and Qianhai to be no different. Despite the old man's powerful attacks, Li Wan faced him with composure.